It's just been a real gift to learn from you guys. And that clarity to me was so good. Just freeing. It's like so liberating. And sometimes it seemed so daunting, right? Like you had so many things to do, and when you can finally see that there's like a light at the end of this really long tunnel.
Hey, so as you get into this episode, this is a great episode, right? Out with Steph. You know, she was great the whole episode, but you're gonna want to stay by and just watch to the very end, because at some point we stopped recording. We start having more of a conversation and things get a little emotional. So I hit record again.
It's especially significant because right before we started this episode, me and James were chatting, and James was sharing some data about authenticity as the biggest impact for humans, authenticity. And so, yeah, stay tuned, watch the whole thing. It's beautiful.
Hey, everybody, welcome back, and thank you for joining us today. Today, we have another amazing photographer. We have Steph Kadlicko with us today. Steph, tell us a little bit about who you are, where you live. Tell us about your business.
Okay, thanks. I'm so excited to be here. So, Steph Kadlicko, I am in Milwaukee, and so for the greater world, sort of near Chicago. And my family's Croatian. My parents emigrated to Canada, so I have all these kind of bases, a little bit of base in Croatia and Europe, Canada, and then here in the States. So I'm a destination wedding photographer, headed for the luxury market, right? So working with the most important thing, amazing clients and amazing kind of like my silent heroes, I always call them, the planners. So I feel that I serve two clients at every event, and that is kind of the planner and the vendor partners, and then of course the actual client themselves. Yeah. So I love what I do. It's been the greatest gift to me. I went to school for a long time. I went to medical school. I was an entomologist. I did all sorts of really cool things in my life. And
sorry, what the hell's that?
An entomologist.
What?
An insect scientist.
Okay. All right.
So, and all of those things have led me to beautiful experiences. But throughout all of that, I was doing photography just a little bit. It was always like creeping up. And then finally, one day the scale tipped where it made more sense to stay in just the art and fulfill my kind of science need and my love for knowledge in other ways. And so I went full time and have never looked back or regretted it. It gets better. I grow. And one of my favorite things is education and kind of continuing that growth journey. I always joke, keeping your ego in check and just making sure that you're not finding yourself blind to certain things that you feel you're working on or you're great at, but the world sees it differently. So that's how I met you guys. And here we are.
Love it.
So what's the source with the work? You said you were always shooting, kind of like growing up. Like, what were you, how weddings? What's the connection? From there
Yeah, I love this story. So I lived in Des Moines, Iowa. They were known for like the place to like wave as you flew over, right? You would never like visit Iowa, but living there was amazing. So there was this little place called the East Village and a restaurant. I hope if there's someone from Des Moines listening to this is a true story. So Luca, this beautiful Italian restaurant, had another kind of annex facility that was called Bagni di Luca, which was a little pizza shop. Yeah. And the pizza shop sold bread. One day I went in to buy a loaf of bread, and Steve, the owner, was there, and it was closing. And he goes, well, I have like 17 loaves. If I give you all of them, will you just hand them out? And I was like, sure. So he gave me this tray, handed it out, started to meet some people in this area. I was new there. A few days later, I'm walking by the restaurant. He's like, Steph, come in. And there was sitting, so him, Steve, the owner, two other men named Steve, a lawyer and an artist, and then two other folks, Amy and Stuart Alexander, who's still very much in the wedding industry. And they just were having this can a conversation be ethereal? Because that's what it was. It was this like ethereal.
Amy and Stuart. Like that.
Not together.
Yeah.
No, not together. Stuart,
Okay.
Alexander, a wedding designer, and Amy was a wedding photographer.
Okay.
And they said, come in, sit down. And we just started talking. And it was this beautiful, I don't even know what you would call that. Like this experience of these people coming together from all walks of life, just spilling and enjoying wine and pasta. And these two were just going on, this planner and this photographer. And I was like, what are they talking about? And I'm like, eating my pasta and I'm so excited about this conversation. And Stuart needs a ride home that day. And it was pouring. And I said, we'll drive you. And so we drove, and he showed us this place that he had draped with all of his like draping that he uses at weddings, but he draped this beautiful 2-story loft. And from there, Amy says, come to a wedding with me. And I was like, okay, I have a Canon Rebel. Obviously, I'm ready.
Yeah.
And so I took my Canon Rebel, no joke, and went to this wedding. And she's like, so there's like consumer grade cameras and professional grade cameras. I'm like, okay. So I bought a 7D, went to another wedding with her. She introduced me to one more friend, shot that wedding, and had my first wedding after that, which was incredible. And that's literally what started the journey. I liked photography and point and shoots and whatever, playing with contrast, but that was the end.
Yeah, you're an advanced tourist with your Rebel. That's the designation. You see a Rebel, you're like, that's like
tourist.
Exactly.
Professional pro-am tourism. You know what I mean? If you were just
and
a
your name is
tourist,
and your name is Uncle Larry.
Yeah, that's
exactly 100%.
You might have a tripod. One of
Right.
those.
Oh, you definitely have a tripod.
Yeah,
for sure.
If you want sharp photos, for sure. Yeah. Anyway.
And from there, and like you've literally been doing weddings ever since.
Yeah.
I'm curious about this medical school entomology, like this side of you, this more analytical. Like, how do you use that in your business, or do you? Like, certainly, there's these two sides of your brain. Is that beneficial for your business? And how do you use it?
I think the biggest way that comes in is I had very driven parents, very involved parents, not overbearing, just like a lovely upbringing. And they instilled a lot of hard work, and then to kind of continue also expectation, but never in, some sort of tragic way. Like you have to do this. I mean, I did have to, but it was like fortified with this love that made you want to too, right? I needed to work hard. I needed to be a good student, but I was always like uplifted with you're capable and you are a good student, continue. And so it was this really nice, to me, this, I don't know, crescendo of like parenting and expectation and love and all of this that led me to good work ethic. And I think that is probably what has translated from, academic and really studying hard to be good in school, do well in school, into what I do now. So I work really hard. And actually, my friend Rebecca asked the other day, like, what are you proudest of in this last year? And I said, honestly, I think it's just drive to continue going. Because it, like what you see online and what you see on social is always the best, right? There's challenges for all of us. Like we have to work hard. We shoot for like 10%. Right, of what are in our business, and the rest of it like is 90% like hustle in other ways. And you need some good work ethic to make sure that you wake up every morning self-employed, right, to at a good time get your workouts in, get your journaling, whatever it is, get your work done. So I think that's what I'd say.
Yeah, nowadays that's a feature. Hardworking, that's a rare thing. It's not necessarily a knock. It's just the world has gotten easier and easier. Kids that grow up now. Like, you don't necessarily need a killer work ethic. You don't need one to survive anymore, is the bottom line. Like your parents, my parents, you still needed one or you weren't going to make it, And so now you can be just lazy as you can, you'll survive. And I think especially in the wedding industry nowadays, if you're like, you are a hard worker, one that's looking, and that's a standout feature. People notice that.
That's amazing to hear you guys say that. And, sometimes where your vantage point is always different, right? So I look and you guys are ahead and have achieved many things that I still look forward to achieving. And so hearing you guys from that vantage point, saying it back this way, that's good, because there's a lot of like, I don't know what you want to say, long hours, long days. It's not a negative. It's just, there's a lot of hard work going into it. Right.
Yeah.
So it's good to know that it pays off.
No, but honestly, if you ask any of the planners that are listening to this right now, they'll tell you that's a feature. It's a huge one.
Yeah.
Hardworking crew, people that are looking and going and above and beyond. People all the time say this to us. I'm like, oh, really? Guys work so hard. Really? I'm like, that's the standard. Like, yeah, other people don't, man. They hang around, they sit, they load, they're on their phones. Like, they don't read it. It's different.
You guys had a podcast recently with Sarah from Gather Events, and she was even talking about her, like, how forming a team is so reliant on like work ethic and just, you can learn skills, you can learn, how to speak, you can learn so many different things, right? And like how to be a good planner, how to be good at your craft. But it's really hard to instill good work ethic in someone like, as an adult and be like, hey, just start cracking whips, right? It's got to be inside.
But think about it, especially as a planner, you're the grand conductor, right? You're running this whole team. And now let's say it's this massive operating, I think at this level. And now say you have a photographer that's entitled or lazy or not doing it. That slows it messes with your whole thing.
Yeah.
As opposed to somebody that's like on it and just moving and like read the timeline and good to go and thinking of you. And that adds value. It's, and you're like, oh, good collaborator. Love that. People love that. And it's nice to be like that.
It's nice to be like that. I mean, at the end of the day that you did everything that you could do. Right. And then there's never any sort of regret with it either. And I love living kind of in that space that put it all in and then you have nothing to be like sad about. It's just, you did your best. And so anyway.
So you mentioned earlier challenges, like we all have challenges. We're all, but you also, it's almost in the same breath, you mentioned education, wanting to grow. I'm curious, most recently, what are some of the challenges that you were experiencing that you came up against that made you go, maybe I need to level up. I need to seek a different type of education or seek new information. What are those challenges?
Yeah. So where I was, let's say in 2020, right? I was coming out of kind of a lower market than I currently serve. And I was starting to grow, starting to make changes with my brand, starting to make changes with my client experience. And I looked at that as like my foundation. And I knew it was necessary. I knew it was getting better. Yeah. But now it was time to kind of put that out into the world, right? Like we think from, not to overuse the term vantage point, but from where you're sitting, what you put out on social media, you think you've now broadcast that to every person directly, right? And in reality, like two people have seen it.
Yeah, right. I work sites with nobody knows.
No, exactly. And so I was thinking to myself, so it's all here. So now what is this next step? Like, how do I strategically, let's work, smarter and not necessarily even harder. How do I get it in front of the right people, but also how do I get the right people for me, like as human beings? Like, where are those hard workers, the kind people, the people that love experiential living, like artful living, people that align with me and who I am as to the core, right? That included clients, that included vendor partners, that included educators like yourself. So what did that look like? And so to me, that was where I was standing. Like, how do I now get in front of this with some sort of strategy? And I don't know what I told the algorithm, but there was Sage Journey, honestly. It popped up in my feed and I was like, oh, like, what is this? And you guys had a little bit of yourselves filming. And what I found with you guys was your style of, let's call it education mentorship, had a different flavor to me. Like it was like this simplified, like stripped back version. And, so many different approaches have helped me in the past, but I hadn't seen yours yet. Like just this new style. And I honestly, I don't even know if I told you this before, but I asked around a little bit. There was a few people that had been in your, had mentored with you. And I was like, okay, who are these dudes? I'm going to give this a try, right? And so I started to look into it and then joined you guys. And to me, it was, you guys cracked the simple element, and like generally speaking, in terms of like growing, let's call it your network, right? Or engaging in relationships with professionals in the most beautiful way. And I think that I'm sold. Like, what did I tell you? I'm drinking your Kool-Aid, you know? So
You're drinking the Kool-Aid. That's funny. Like, and we loved having you as part of this community. It's been great. You've been a huge asset to, I think, not only us, but lots of people. So thank you for your contribution, because that's really what this is, right? It's we're learning from people on this podcast, in the group. We're learning as much as we're giving out. So thank you for being part of that.
That's
Thank
a
you.
big
My
old
pleasure.
collaboration, right? Because the market is also constantly shifting and changing. And it's so big. Like the areas you'll push into, we can't hit all of it. We've tried, you can't. And so there's new data coming back and new propositions, and having more heads at the table is always an advantage, I think. Unless they're kids, and then it's like, no. They should be seen, not heard, right?
Seen, not heard yet, kids.
No, I don't run that. Said like a new way. This education was different to you. How? What's different about this?
I think there's strengths in both approaches. Some approaches use a lot of information in detail to inspire and kind of energize. And I think you guys came at it from the opposite way of like, let's strip it back and show you how simple it is. And I had never seen anyone do it that way. And ultimately, we talked about the same things, right? Like same general topics as, the foundations of a business, the foundations of a brand, right? But your approach to, hold on a second, you don't have to do everything. There's lots of things you can do. I mean, you can sign up to do 101 different things in your day, but what are the things, 1, 2, 3, however many, that are the most impactful? And let's strip that out at its basic form. And I mean, as a, whatever you want to call it, as an extrovert, as like a, maybe speak before you think. And I mean, I try to work on that as I get wiser and older, but it's nice to just have like a single sentence where I might struggle to create one sentence, in case anyone is getting this in this podcast. You guys managed to do that, like a simple sentence. And to me, that's like so profound, honestly. I mean, we joke a little bit, but it's so simple, and just framing it the right way can give you the clarity that you need to take action on it, rather than just keep thinking about it,
Yeah, I love that. No,
and planning to do it.
I love it, James, because it's not rocket science. We're not inventing new things in this market. Like you said, a business, a brand, sales, whatever, there it is. But what we are dealing with here is a very niche market, ultra luxury, right? And what we've just discovered in a series of small aha moments really is like this, not like that. Oh, this works, that doesn't. Do this, don't do that. This is worth your time, that's a waste of your time. And in this niche market, there's a handful of things like that if you consistently enact them, results follow. And that's what, it's not rocket science, because it's like, you're right. We're not like, I don't know. Be smarter than us. What industry shall I name? Rocket science.
I think that's great.
Rocket science.
Yeah. I think you're nailing that on the head, because as educators, right? An educator can take the approach of, let me tell you about everything there is out there, right? And you're doing a service with that as that style of educator. You're enlightening them. You're showing them new places, like maybe they find new strengths, things, again, blind spots. But then if you've done a lot of that, for example, honing in, and rather than going, the mile wide and inch deep, doing the inch wide and mile deep work, it has profound results. And I've seen them. So, I mean, here I am to preach about it with you guys.
I was going to ask you about it, because you sent us an email a while back that with like this aha moment. Right. Like, and which to me, because this podcast hopefully is about helping other people grow and learn for me to grow and learn. Tell us about that aha moment for you. Like what was that thing for you that like just kind of changed everything for you?
Yeah. So this, I mean, like I said to you in the email and, you know, in our conversations post email, it's almost like silly to put words around because you're like, duh, right? But when you are not doing it in that way and you finally, you know, do, you're just like, oh, no kidding. Okay.
Yeah.
So to me, it was in how I framed relationship building. That was the biggest takeaway for me because I am a natural networker. I'm a natural socializer, all of these things.
Yeah.
But I was under the impression, operating under the philosophy that you let those sort of like cook naturally. If that person, you know, runs into you, then you use your natural kindness and all these things, and then you leave it alone.
Yeah, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be.
Yes, yes, exactly. You know, exactly that. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Truly that. And here was this really novel concept of like reaching out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so simple. And to say, hey, I love your work. Hey, I have this, you know, I told you guys there was an example. I connected with a wedding planner because she posted like her dog on her story and it was on the same IKEA bed sheets that I have. And I was like, oh my God, I love those. Oh my God, I love them too. Like, okay, so I would have just left that there. And instead of just leaving it, I asked her to go out for lunch.
Yeah.
I mean, right? Like, but it was these little things that then said, hey, so now instead of maybe spending your time on activity X that you think is, you know, very beneficial that all of the industry has told you to do, like clockwork. Well, what if you shifted your perspective and said, okay, so where, for example, have your referrals come from, right? Pick that. So I'm going to use a blog as a blog posting. Okay. How many referrals have you gotten because someone said, I read your blog?
Yeah.
When I did sort of like my account reconciliation and sort of round my numbers, it was a big fat 0.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did that help with SEO and all these things? Maybe yes, all those things. But what moved my needle? And it was relationships. So to me, one of the foundational things for me was to continue to work on that and grow from there. And so I don't know. I mean, some of these simple things just made a heck of a difference for me.
Yeah.
Well, some of the best stuff that you learn is simple, right? Those are the aha moments. And that's kind of what we were after. We were like, look, in this course is everything that we've done. But, you know, we look at those things pretty simply. But what you're talking about, we learn, you know, you have to ask for what you want.
Yeah.
This phrase rings in my head. You have to ask for what you want.
Yeah.
And we learned this from Cece Johnson, Cece New York. She's a stationer, right? I mean, we've told this story, but we were at a dinner. She saw an old client talking with new potential clients across the room, and just
It was across
the other table.
Yeah, it's like crazy.
Yeah, but we watched her like jump up, go over there, work her magic for 5 or 10 minutes, and she came back, and we were both just looking at her like, holy moly. And she said this, guys, you have to ask for what you want.
Yeah.
And like, the bells went off in our head, just like, ring, ring, ring.
Yeah.
Powerful.
But what I love about that is that's how opportunity works, right? For us in the first place to end up at that table with Cece, to hear that, to have it. That's outreach, starting to do looking for opportunities to collaborate. And then you end up at this thing and that thing. And you're pushing because you realize this is the job. This aspect, this is like, if we're making sausages, this is making sausages. This is it.
Yeah.
That's really, it's that simple. That's the activity. I learned this with running, with lifting weights. Like everything has a certain mechanism. And once you figure that out, it's very flippant simple. I remember when I started yoga or something years ago, the guy said how when you have a healthy body, you don't really feel it. It feels light. And it didn't make any sense to me. But it's simplicity again, right? It's like It's so simple.
Yeah, it's so simple. I mean, you nailed it. It's this every task, what you're doing has all the bells and whistles around it in the actual one thing that you're going to do. So you can plan it until you're like blue in the face of like your workout gear and what day you'll go and schedule it. And it doesn't matter. Go to the gym, man. You know, just go, just step in and start this. And my friend Sonia Cams the other day mentioned is something on her Instagram. She shared this quote that said, if you break it down, ultimately like summarizing this, 18 minutes a day is all it takes to reach like your expert status. And this was much more, again, a little profound statement in this quote, but it was like, how do you reach your, expert level, your 100,000 hours and all of these things? You take that step and you do it for a little bit.
No, and totally. Over time. It's
over time.
All of it's like that, like building muscle, building endurance, building a business, building a relationship, building a child, a human, like none of this happens quickly. I look at it now, I'm like, yes, everything, sit down. Like it's going to take time. You can't outreach. Yeah. Takes time because now Steph goes from walking into the room going, and they'll notice me, or Otto does, and goes, my work is that amazing. Like realizing, oh, that's not it. I'll say hi. Oh, okay, I realize that now I'll say hi. But now you're also following up and tending to this relationship. Like that's work. And over time, it'll give you fruit. Lots of it.
It gives you fruit. And one of the most liberating like elements to maybe like my adulthood and personal growth was I don't think most of us are wired, I hope, to just be like, what am I going to get? What am I going to get? Right. But a lot of times I think you sit in a place of this like neutrality. You're not necessarily thinking what you're going to get, but you're also not thinking, what am I going to give? You're just sort of there. And when I framed it in my head that I believe in karma, I believe in God, I believe in the universe and power and all these things, right? Whatever it is, wind, all of it, I believe in it all. Yes, it will come back to you if you live a good life, right? Just generally speaking, life in general. So how can I now just take like my ego out of my day and like give something to somebody? How can I contribute to their life without ever thinking about like, what am I getting back? Like, how can I invest in other people? Because that's what a real relationship is, right? You investing in them. You're not sitting there like waiting for your turn to talk. You're listening first. And if you get a turn to talk, wonderful. But you know that if it's a good friendship, it's going to come. And so that, to me, that framing, which I think you guys reinforce definitely in your mentorship, that to me is also foundational. You go in like a human being when you don't ask like, hey, my name's so-and-so, like, what can I get from you? Right.
That's it, right? Because lots of photographers, they will object to that and say, oh, it's icky, it's sales, it's cold calling. But you can authentically do that. Yeah. You can authentically take interest in somebody. Notice their work, aspire to want to work with them. It's all nothing icky. I love it. You reach out, you tell them, I love what you do. Here's what I do. Like, that's okay. And then who knows?
I think so too. Exactly. Yeah. You have to, I don't think shyness has a place, but I don't think boasting has a place. But you have an honest, authentic conversation and bring value in your copy on your website. Don't make it about make it about what value you give to your clients or your vendor partnerships, whatever it is. And I think to me, that is just like when it all came together, and you guys honestly were like instrumental in the certain parts of that for me, so much so that it just made it all clear. And I feel like, get this, my calendar is like way emptier. I have more time to do these things, right? Like I've stripped so much noise out, right? Like the 80-20 rule, the 20% of what you do brings 80% of your results. I stopped doing a lot of that other 80% of that stuff because it was like just to say that I did it.
Yeah.
Guys, love it.
Yeah, and I love that because what you also do by simplifying that is you start having space to recognize opportunity.
Yeah.
Like
it's not noise
listening to
all
you,
the time.
how you're seeing this now. I just did my kid's school asked me to come, the high school asked me to come do career day.
Yeah. Okay.
And talk about photography. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go talk about this. And I started thinking about, what am I going to tell these kids about photography? I was like, no, I'm going to tell them about career.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about photography a little bit, but I realized, even I'm learning this even while I'm sitting there talking to these kids, was my first thing that I said to them when they came in, I was like, I'm glad you're here. I'm going to change your life. And they're all like, okay, like high school kids do. But you realize as a human being, opportunity is fleeting, right? To these kids, I said, have you guys ever played whack-a-mole in the arcade? You know whack-a-mole, right? The ball comes up and you try to hit it with a hammer. And opportunity is exactly like that. It's fleeting and it comes up, and if you don't grab it, it will disappear. And it take every opportunity that you get for opportunity. Take it, grab it. I said today, someone's going to come into your room and go, hey, let's go for a hike. Say yes. David Beam the other day said to us, like, say yes to people. Say yes to opportunity. It's the same thing, like grabbing it when you see it and having space to recognize it is huge.
Have you, what's Elizabeth Gilbert's book, the art one? I can't remember the title of it. Oh gosh, she's the same lady that wrote Eat, Pray, Love, but she has one. Oh gosh, all the artists out there are going to be like, really? You forgot this. Okay, so Elizabeth Gilbert, her book, she talks about this concept of ideas being little beings, and they come and they like knock on, James's door or Otto's door, and they present themselves, and that's like that feeling when you have this great idea. But now, do you like kind of seize that opportunity and do it, or do you like put it off till later? And then when you come around to it, it's like, it's not there. You forget. It's not as powerful. It's not inspirational. And she tells this story of her having this one idea for a book, and certain circumstances in her life, had her time, and she was occupied in other areas. And she meets this lady at a conference who starts telling her that she's writing this book, and they start sharing this idea, and it's like literally the same idea down to these characters about the construction company in Brazil whose equipment gets swallowed by the earth, and the secretary that's involved, and they had the same idea. And so she reinforces this concept that she should have seized that opportunity, because she loves now this lady's story, and it knocked on her door, but it left because she didn't take that opportunity to do that. If you haven't read that book, it's great. Anyway, so yes, you need to seize that opportunity. You need to see it. You need to clear to your point, like clear the noise out of your day, out of your calendar, so that you can have that moment, opportunity to see that stuff.
And you don't need to paralyze yourself, like waiting around going, like, is this the right opportunity? Like, because 99% of the time, that first sort of whack-a-mole, you hit that first opportunity, is not the thing. It's just like a portal into the potential of the next thing and you're like, it's like an idea. It's like a test print in the darkroom. Like at first one's not the print. The 8th one's not the print. The 9th one's not the print. It's like 15, and so you push into it because it's beyond the veil. Why am I saying that? It's beyond the veil. What am I talking about? Yes. Anyway, B-roll. Whack-a-mole, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
You said, I say whack-a-mole, you say beyond the veil. It all works.
Yeah. Okay, so Steph, with all of that said, then, so what now? Where are you heading now? Tell us where you're heading. You seem ready to go. You're amped. You've realized something. You're like, what now?
One of the major things that has started happening has been a shift towards what I briefly mentioned, these amazing relationships. And that might be with the vendor partnerships, but also partnership and this lovely relationship collaboration with the client. So I have had nothing but spectacular clients. And that, I have to say that's been pretty motivating, because being intentional, putting out the right message, and again, starting with your brand and all of those things, and then keeping those relationships going and building those partnerships with like wedding vendors allows you to create these beautiful teams. And then when you come as a beautiful team that knows how to operate together and knows what makes each other tick, and even that if you've never worked with each other before, but you understand you start to understand who people are online, you come together and you create this team and this collaborative body that serves the client. And all of a sudden, everyone's pushing for the same goal. And people, you might switch hats for a quick second, like on a wedding day. Nothing should preclude anybody from, as a photographer, not being the planner, so you can't help someone, find an answer or something. You step into all these other roles and you see this like momentum start. And then those clients refer you to other clients. And I've found that having these amazing relationships has made running my business even more rewarding and more exciting. And it gives you more momentum and more inspiration and all these things, right? So I'm excited to continue like moving that forward and ensuring that we've talked about this, I think together. You've talked about it on your podcast. We've talked about it in the group. You are hiring your client as much as they're hiring you, like in terms of like when you're meeting your clients, you're looking for the right relationship. You don't just say yes to anybody. You say yes to a good fit. And then you're happy to do the editing and you're happy to do the culling. And then you're happy to talk to the vendor. Like all of this, like builds and creates this forward moving momentum that I so want to capitalize on from the standpoint of like being in a good place with the business and carrying that forward and then serving through that. So that's what's kind of at least the framework around it. And I'm going to continue to grow my relationships, continue to, again, offer, serve in, all the ways that I can, whatever, just use your gifts and, your blessings to their full capacity. And then what's not your blessing, let someone else come in and with that. And to me, that's just made huge, like a huge mark on me and in my business.
Happy people do good work.
I always like to try to get practical because I'm, I want people to have great takeaways. And not that we haven't had great takeaways. I think we are, but what would you say that you've done in your business? Not necessarily just within our course, just that's allowed you to make big leaps forward. Is it about risk taking? Was it about a specific strategy that you used? What is that for you?
Okay, so you guys have heard me pipe on about this within our group. I really struggled with my voice and how I spoke online. So what did I sound like in my copy on my website? What did I sound like in my captions on Instagram? And I mean, honestly, this took me years to perfect because I always felt like we talk about imposter syndrome. Yes, I felt that, but it was an imposter because I knew that wasn't my voice. And I would make these posts about like some shoes and why these shoes are just such a perfect thing to like invest in on your day. And like, I'd like preach on about it and I'd be like, oh God, read the post and I'd be like, oh, at least I posted. So let's move on. And then I read this book by Donald Miller called Story Brand. And he uses a concept I think that others have also presented, but where you are not the hero of the darn story. And that was like again, talk about like light bulb moments. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not. Oh, I thought I was like the great photographer, it's not about you, man. It's not about you. And so when you can frame it, and his framing is like, you're the guide, not the hero. Think of Yoda, think of, all these, and in that book, they draw these parallels in movies and where you can start to figure it out, right? Make your own metaphors in your head of, okay, so I'm here to guide the people. So now your voice steps into another kind of, steps into speaking from another angle, right? Yeah. That was huge for me. Then it was branding. I think I don't have to pipe on about branding. You have to know what your brand stands for. A brand is not your logo. That's an element of branded material, but your brand, what are your values? What do you stand for? Who's your client? All of those things, knowing that and really digging in deep on that. I think that was huge. And then the big one, your client experience. Once I refined those three things, my business took off in so many different ways. The relationships were better. I was clearer, maybe busier because I still didn't learn all of James and Otto's secrets, but busy, but things were clear, right? I had a big busy calendar where I was getting things done and I was moving forward. But when you understand how to make your client happy, like at the end of the day, you could still be a photographer without a website. I mean, that's maybe not the approach you're going to take, right? But you could show someone a photo and say, I'm a photographer. I know how to do this. Here's an album, whatever that is. It's not about your website. It's helpful. It's not about your business card. That's helpful. It's not about your Instagram. Helpful. It's about, did you do what you came to do, right? Take the photos, and was your client happy? And then how did you make them feel? I think a lot of us have now finally learned this. It's about what these people feel after working with you. And once I learned all these things, and this was a little bit of a journey for me. Sure. And prior to you guys, I also, I took other courses. I have had and continue to have other mentors. There's so many different realms that you can, tackle things. And you got to pick those little bits and try to distill it to what Otto was saying, like that simplified thing, so that you can make that next step. And not all of it has to happen at once.
No, it doesn't.
It took me several years to make a leap from where I was to where I am today. And it was good. I remember I don't know what we call that the lovely market. I think that's an industry term now. I was somewhere, somebody called it that, right? Somewhere in that realm. And then transitioning to somebody in a market that is not price shopping necessarily. They may be, everyone cares about price at some level, right? But it wasn't the main driver. You had to frame your approach. And if you grew up in this next market, wonderful, you understand it. But now, as I move into like a luxury market, I have to reframe again. So what does the luxury client think like, right? What does a luxury service provider think like? So making these baby steps, you just take your time, do the work, you'll get there. And so, did that answer the question? It did.
Yeah,
you definitely did. Yes.
Yeah, not so much, right? Just now consistency over time. If you just do, if you just do one thing, you change nothing, and you just start reaching out, for example, or just that over time will yield a significant result. Just that one thing. You're doing a bunch of them,
Right.
Significant results to follow.
Right.
No doubt.
So excited for that. And I think it's really amazing for people just this podcast alone, never mind even the mentorship for a second, that's like the added, deep dive that you guys have. Just this podcast alone, like listening to all the insights from the different people that have been on it. And you can glean so much information. Like you can see so much of like what makes people tick and what's moving the mark, right?
Yeah.
So, shameless plug for your podcast. Like, tune into those things because you really do have like industry's top people here.
Yeah.
The cream of the crop, like you have them and they're spilling exactly what it takes to do all these things to make, people happy and make your business push forward.
Yeah.
Be here for it. Just strip it down and do some work.
Yeah, and if you look at everybody we've had on, all of those stars of the industry, the best of the best, those are all long careers.
Yeah.
Lots of time, lots of up and down, lots of learn and fail and fail and fail and win and fail and win and win and fail, like lots.
Underscore, like underline that, highlight, italicize, bold it. Like truly, it doesn't happen overnight, and you don't like making one step in one thing, Otto, like you were saying, you'll see a result. And then you kind of build that into a habit, and it doesn't feel, just like you were saying, you don't feel the body when it's fit. You won't feel that because it becomes like muscle memory and just like a task that you've seen the results. You're not convincing yourself that it's going to work.
Your brain immediately iterates. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then you absorb that next, or you take on that next.
If you move, that's the thing. If you take that next step, your brain immediately goes, it's like going into a sensory deprivation tank. Like I'm outside, I'm having a normal day. I'm thinking all my thoughts, it's work and it's my wife and it's kids and it's me. And you step into that tank and they close the lid. and 5 minutes later, it's like it's all gone,
Yeah.
right? So it's all anyway, I don't know.
Can you tell us more about sensory deprivation tanks in all seriousness? I'm sitting here. Yeah. I mean, I understand the concept. I have never, Otto, I can firmly say never been in a sensory deprivation tank. Tell us more.
You should try it.
Tell us what this is.
No, it's intense. Well, you don't know what it is? You've never...
No.
Well, it's like it looks like an egg.
Okay.
And it has saline water in it. So you get in butt naked and you float on this water. You just float in it. No, they close the lid and there's zero sound, zero light. And you just sit there for an hour. You just float, you sleep, you do whatever. But it's fascinating to watch what happens to your mind when input stops.
Yeah.
Your brain just completely shifts into another state because it just switches things, like switching the lights off for bedtime. It just goes, and there you sit. And then
this is fascinating.
Just so random. You watch your brain go, what about this? What about that?
Yeah.
Random. Because there's nothing happening. It's just quiet.
I was thinking about, like, when you both were talking about, like, step by step, like one step at a time, because so many people don't move, whether that's because of don't take opportunity or don't start a journey, because all they're looking at is, how far do I have to go? I have to climb this giant mountain. Yeah. And it was Jeff Bezos saying, if you get 1% better every day, at the end of the year, you're 37 times better than you were on that first day. 1%.
Yeah.
One step at a time. And so, I think that's the takeaway for me is just start. Yeah. The learning is in the doing, and in one step at a time.
James, do you remember that? It was a few years ago, before we had one of our big aha moments, specifically with outreach. There was a Jordan Peterson quote where he said, what did he say? Work 10% harder and you'll make 40% less. He's quoting some studies about how that works. I remember saying, that's interesting. I believe him, so I'll trust him. I remember saying to James, let's just try this. Not that we went from there. We were already working, but we saw that change, like specifically with one area. We upped the load, and the next year the results doubled in return. And then we upped it more, and I was like, oh, there's a correlation there. The more we do of this, the more we get of that. Cool. Do that.
Right, right.
I'm excited for you, Steph. You're there.
Thank you. I'm so excited. And honestly, you guys are like a little beacon, because you share we said it, you share in a unique way, but you're also very transparent, which is helpful to see. It makes that, that mountain you guys were talking about a little less large and daunting. Like, I see the path, right? And that's very, very helpful, like soothing.
I hear what you're saying. So we're like the business of luxury weddings for dummies, right?
No, man, you're the guides. Like, you're coming in with your wise staffs, like Yoda. You speak better than Yoda. You're guiding us like on this, like up this mountain. And it's a long path. And some of us are lower, some of us are higher, some of us are whatever, turned around, like whatever it might be. But there's this, there's a path. I don't want to call it a formula, because everybody has a different approach and a different, brand that influences it. But there's certain steps that you must take. And I cannot reiterate put the work in. Like, don't expect it overnight, man. It doesn't happen like that.
No. That's the truth. Yeah, it's the truth. This has been wonderful, Steph. Like, so helpful.
A pleasure.
And again, like, this is the beauty of this. We're learning. Like, I love this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of our community and part of this education and part of this podcast. We really appreciate everything that you bring. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We'll have you back on again next year. See where you're at.
I love it. I love it.
Steph, is there anything that you are doing that you want to tell people about?
Yeah, thank you for that opportunity. One of the things that I'm very excited about, and it's kind of been cooking sort of in the background for a couple of years, but I've officially launched my hospitality coaching. So it's just 3 or 4 people each session, but where we work one-on-one on how to really transform their specific client experience and the elements of their brand that allow them to serve and come at their service from a place of hospitality. And enrollment's about to open, and I've had 4 students go through it already, and it's been transformational. And I'm so excited to see who the next ones are, because that to me is where there's a gift that we all have that we can put out there that opens doors. And I want to find that with people.
Yeah, it's
So
amazing.
thank you.
Thank
Thank
Yeah,
you.
of course.
Exciting. Looking forward to watching that unfold more. It's amazing, Steph.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Me too.
Well, seriously, thank you for joining us.
Thank
Really
you for
appreciate it.
having me. And I look forward to honestly growing with you guys, alongside you guys, and continuing to mentor under you.
Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Oh, it's just been a real gift to learn from you guys. And
Oh,
that clarity to me was so, goodness, just freeing. It's like so liberating. And sometimes it seemed, so daunting, right? Like you had so
yeah.
many things to do. And when you can finally see that there's like a light at the end of this
Yeah.
really long tunnel,
yeah.
it just really helps you. And I mean, almost immediately after listening and enacting, or putting some of those things into action that you guys have said, I've seen results. And there's nothing that makes you feel better than, seeing results, right?
Yeah.
Again, like everyone tells you it's okay, they're going to come, and, in workouts and all these things. And you got to like believe it for like 2 months and like hope that you're going to like lose 5 pounds or get bigger muscles or whatever.
Gotta see something. Gotta see something. Yeah.
Right. But it's like that first time that like, you realize, hey, I just ran for an extra 15 minutes and I'm not winded, or I don't hurt, or my knees, like I did yoga and suddenly my knee pain is gone. Like it actually worked. So anyways, it's very like this big like sigh of relief to see some of these things paying off in such like beautiful ways and like rich ways. So I'm so grateful.
No, that's immense. That's like,
Yeah. And honestly, that's what I mean. That's a huge part of why we do this. Like to hear that, because that just fills us up.
no, big time.
Me too.
So-
Me too.
We get it, Steph. Like we get it. I was a struggling artist too. Like we've gone through all of this,
Yeah.
we get it.
Yeah. And you guys have mentioned it on, I think in another episode. It's like, it's isolating, right? Like you have your family and your friends and all that, even other business owners, and you try to understand each other and support each other. But at the end of the day, you're sitting in your own like office, kitchen, dining room, working on this in complete isolation, trying to be an expert, taking all the, whatever it is, like courses and reading and listening to people's like social media and the ones like you find people that you trust, but you still have to do that yourself. Right. And you're sitting there in isolation and being like, well, I only have, 5 hours. So which ones am I going to do? Did I pick the right ones? And I don't know, because I have to wait till next year, right, to see if something's going to happen. So it's very liberating and beautiful to finally see like the fruit. And I mean, like hats off to you guys, like quickly.
Yeah. No, that's amazing to hear. It's really, and these are not even these are the exciting part. This. These are just the initial ones.
Right.
These are not the big ones. There's no way. And up there, it doesn't work like that. Growth goes the other way. That's the great news here. That's the great news.
Here for it. Fingers crossed. Gonna work hard. Gonna stay motivated. Gonna walk alongside you guys and a few other people that have influenced me, tremendously. And it's great to be in good company. And you guys asked once, like, what do I want, right? Like in terms of like, what are my goals as part of like interactions with you guys and so forth. And to me, one of the most simple things is like, I just want to walk alongside you guys. It's just beautiful to see other success and kindness and openness. So thank you guys.
Yeah. And the beauty of it, the more you spend time with us, the more you go, of course I can do this. You gotta be kidding me. I know them. They're idiots. They're complete idiots. If they did this, we can do this.
And that's maybe the most welcoming part, right? And that's why you guys have some pretty excited mentees, students
No, it's like an advanced sales technique. Always be the dumbest guy in the room.
Oh God. So anyways,
No,
I'm
you know
excited.
what? My son is doing a podcast. He's 16
Yeah.
years old. He started this podcast.
Okay.
And I was sitting listening at the door the other day. He was interviewing a gentleman. His podcast is called Wise Beyond My Years, and he's just seeking wisdom. And I heard this guy say to him, "You're never going to be the smartest person in the room. Everybody needs help. Everybody."
Yeah.
And I was like, holy moly, that is the most profound thought. Like, we all need help, and we don't have all the answers. Like,
Yeah.
you need to be open, and
Yeah.
you need to find that help. Like,
Yeah.
No.
it's
But
the key to success, really.
But the thing that, like, the secret in there too, is that knowing that you don't have to, that you're not going to be the smartest one, and that all of us need help, lets you stop operating from, I mean, I've used the term ego a few times today, but it makes you step out of like yourself in the self-centered kind of position. You're allowed to be vulnerable. You're allowed to ask for help. You don't have to be the expert on everything.
Yeah.
That's actually the beauty of it, that you're not the expert on everything. And you're just like, oh, well, excuse me. Like, I mean, I just feel lighter today, right? Forget the pounds coming off. Like, that is just like mental strain that's just been lifted. And you're just like, so
Yeah. You know
that's
what's
amazing.
funny about it? It's the weakest position you can take. It's the most limiting, weakest. The resources is so limited. It's just you. Even if it's just one person. It's so narrow and limited.
Yep.
And then you open it up to other people, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay.
And transparent. Like, people see that. People see when you think it's transparent. Like, everyone knows you're not an expert on everything.
But Steph, watch this podcast back. Everybody that's going to watch this. Once you cried, I'm sorry to say it broke open. Like, a whole nother level of communication happened, right? There's that authenticity. It's like it's beautiful.
Whew. Well.